So, oh my god, the day has come. Noel and Liam have finally settled their feud and they're going to play together for the first time in 15 years as Oasis. A day that anyone who's a fan of 90s music never thought would happen. I never thought it would happen. And what's actually kind of funny is, even as a pretty big fan of Oasis, it's impossible to keep track of all the things that happen between Noel and Liam Gallagher to create so much resentment between them. So first of all, it's pretty important to note that there's actually a 5-year age difference between Noel and Liam Gallagher, and that their childhoods were wildly different as a result, despite being from the same family. Noel was born in May 1967, second born after his brother Paul. Their father was an alcoholic and subjected the boys to a lot of abuse. Liam came along 5 years later, and by the time he was 3 years old, their mother had had enough, left their father, removing her sons from this violent situation. Just 4 years after that, Noel started playing guitar at 12, finding an outlet in his creativity and music. At first, Liam wasn't really that interested, and he actually says that getting hit in the head with a hammer accidentally one day in his shop class literally altered his brain chemistry and made him into music. So he started listening to bands like the Beatles and the Kinks, T-Rex, and the current really big band in Manchester at the time, the Stone Roses. In 1988, Noel and Liam were at the legendary Stone Roses show at the International Club in Manchester, a show that they and many others said was a life-changing experience. Shortly after this, Noel got a job as a roadie with the band the Inspiral Carpets, which took him on his first trip to America. When he returned to England, he found that his little brother had started singing in a band called Rain, but he was in no way impressed with the way that they sounded beyond Liam's voice. Liam said, "Well, if you think we suck so much, why don't you be our manager?" And Noel said, "Absolutely not, but I will join your band and make you the biggest band in the world if you give me 100% creative control." Liam agreed, and Oasis came to life. Pop forward to 1994 and the trouble is already starting. The band have released their debut album, Definitely Maybe, and have started touring and doing publicity. In April, they released their first single, Supersonic, and it's a huge hit. And the way that the brothers are thinking about the band is fundamentally different. Noel sees himself as a serious musician, writing serious music. He likes the fame, but what he's after is respect. Liam, on the other hand, happily embraces the rock and roll animal stereotype, starts acting belligerently in public, earning a reputation for the band that Noel did not appreciate. They started interrupting each other in interviews to quip and insult each other, showing the media and everybody else right away that there were issues between them. The tension grew when Liam thought it would be funny to change some of Noel's lyrics when they played them on their tour in America, both to annoy his brother and because he thought it was funny to watch the American fans struggle to sing along. They were booked for an infamous gig at the Whiskey A Go-Go in Los Angeles, and a drunk Liam was performing like shit, hurling insults at the band. Noel tried to respond, so he chucked a tambourine at him. Noel walked off stage and considered even then if this was something that he wanted to continue doing. But the band kept getting bigger and bigger, and in the summer of 1995, they were in rural Wales recording their second album, What's the Story, Morning Glory, and the tension between them would reach a frightening peak. The location they chose to record this album was a huge mistake. They were in isolation, so of course they all got on each other's nerves relentlessly, especially Noel and Liam. So one night, Liam's messing around with some of the guys, and a fire extinguisher goes off, damaging some of their equipment, including one of Noel's guitars. Noel freaks out at Liam, starting a very real physical fight with him, smashing up the entire studio. To end the fight, Noel grabs a cricket mallet and whacks Liam across the back of the head with it. Alan White, the band's new drummer, who'd only been with them for a couple of weeks, takes Noel and they get into his car and start to drive away, as Liam is chasing them down the street with a garbage bin. But then What's the Story, Morning Glory blew up, and Oasis did become the biggest band in the world. Wonderwall was set up to be one of the legendary tracks of the whole decade, and the band is selling out stadiums, they're invited to play festivals, and Don't Look Back in Anger becomes an instant anthem. At the beginning of August in 1996, the band played a set of shows outdoors at Nebworth House, a Tudor-style castle where they played to crowds of 125,000 people per night, which was a huge success. The band were riding high, and it seemed like this would be the perfect setup for their next major performance shortly afterwards at London's Royal Festival Hall for the recording of Oasis's MTV Unplugged special. There were problems right from the beginning. Liam was in a bad mood, kept complaining that his throat hurt. He was afraid of damaging his voice. At the same time, the media was becoming obsessed with this like bad boy portrayal that he was giving off, and he was leaning into it. He kept showing up late, whining, walking off stage in the middle of songs, all throughout rehearsal. The American crews from MTV were baffled by his unprofessionalism, because at this point, MTV Unplugged was a really big deal. Why was he throwing it away like this? So the day that they were recording the show, Liam had not showed up, and there were rumors that he'd been out on a couple-day-long binge. About an hour before the set, he shows up, absolutely shit-faced, and he couldn't sing, so they had to decide what to do about the show. So Noel walks out on stage, cool as a cucumber, and says,
Liam ain't going to be with us tonight because he's got sore throat.
Sits down with his guitar and seamlessly picks up Liam's singing parts with an insane amount of professionalism, especially considering how flustered he must have been in that situation. It's made even more apparent when we find out that Liam was actually up in a box seat heckling his brother throughout the set. But Oasis continued to exist. And to be honest, it was starting to become evident in the music that the tension between the brothers was starting to affect their ability to work together. The next major event between the two was a couple years later when the band were on tour in Europe, and another drunken altercation occurred, surprise, surprise, and Liam questioned the paternity of Noel's daughter Annis, who'd recently been born. Noel split Liam's lip open over that one and walked off the stage, once again contemplating his position in this band and leaving them to finish the last leg of the tour without him. In 2002, Oasis released their 5th studio album, Heathen Chemistry, and it went to #1 on the UK charts. It was a pretty big album. So they started on their European tour in the fall. In December that year, Liam and their drummer Alan White were arrested in Munich after a brawl which left Liam without 2 front teeth and a £40,000 fine for the damages and for booting a police officer in the ribs. Anyways, a couple years later, it's 2004, Oasis play Glastonbury, and it's a disaster. Noel had admitted in an interview shortly afterwards that their relationship had devolved into a psychological game of manipulation between each other, always fighting through the press, never actually resolving anything. So now it's 2009. The band is barely a band anymore at this point. They'd been canceling gigs that summer because Liam kept complaining about laryngitis. Noel was fed up. On August 28th, 2009, Oasis were set to perform at the Rock en Seine festival in Paris, and they pulled out right before they were about to play. A couple hours later, Noel issued an official statement saying that he had quit the band because he simply could not stand working with Liam for 1 second longer. Afterwards, Noel expressed nothing but relief, while Liam, though he continued playing with the remaining members of Oasis under a different name, eventually launching his own solo project, he said that the end of Oasis was devastating for him. So then it took 15 more years of jabbing at each other in the press, Liam apologizing publicly and privately, him constantly saying he'd be ready anytime his brother wanted to get back together. And finally, Noel Gallagher answered the call. And now we wait and we see this new set of interactions between these two brothers is going to look like after all these years.